Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks.
My name is Carolyn Brooks. I'm from a small town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. I built my home with my bare hands after my husband died. Every nail, every floorboard, every memory soaked in sweat, blood, and years of sacrifice. And now, my only son is trying to take it from me. "You're a selfish old woman," my son, Darren, barked in front of the courthouse steps, loud enough for reporters and strangers to hear. "You think everything's about you." I spun around so fast the heel of my boot scraped the concrete. "Excuse me?" I growled. "You're standing there, trying to take me to court over a house I built while you were still in diapers, and I'm the selfish one?" People stopped. Strangers watched. But he didn't care. "You think just because you built it, it belongs to you forever?" Darren's voice cracked like thunder. "I gave up years of my life taking care of you. You owe me." "Owe you?" I shouted. "Owe you? You moved in with your third girlfriend last year, Darren. You haven't called me in 8 months, but now that I'm retired and the house is worth something, suddenly you care?" He stepped closer, his finger shaking in my face. "You've never respected me. Never. You treated me like a damn child even when I was 25. And now you're gonna see what happens when you push someone too far." I took one long breath through my nose, fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. "I raised you. I worked 2 jobs while going through chemo just so you could finish college. Don't you dare rewrite history just to feed your greed." And then, he said it. "You're gonna regret making me your enemy, Mom. You'll be out on the street when this is done." I swear. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just looked him square in the eyes and said, "Then let's go inside and find out who really built this house, and who's just trying to steal it." You could hear a pin drop when we walked into that courtroom. Let me tell you something. Family can break your heart in ways no stranger ever could. You expect betrayal from the outside world, from bosses, from exes, even from friends. But when your own child turns on you, it feels like your soul just got stepped on. But I want every woman listening to hear this: do not let guilt silence your truth. Do not let someone rewrite your story just because they share your blood. Because what my son didn't know was, I didn't just build a house. I built a legacy. And I wasn't going to let him take it down with a lawsuit and a tantrum. When we sat in that courtroom, I didn't even look at him. I stared straight ahead. The judge, an older man with kind eyes and a skeptical mouth, looked at Darren first. "Mr. Brooks, would you like to state your case?" Darren stood up all smug and polished in his too-tight suit. "Yes, Your Honor. I believe that since I lived with my mother in that house for over a decade, and contributed emotionally and sometimes financially, I have partial ownership. She's now retired and unstable, and I'm trying to protect what's also mine." "Unstable?" I nearly leapt from my chair. But my lawyer squeezed my arm, and I remembered what my grandmother used to say: "Let the snakes talk long enough, and they'll choke on their own venom." Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly. Straightened my back. Cleared my throat. "Your Honor. I built that house with my bare hands. After my husband died in a logging accident, I had 2 choices: fall apart or rise up. So I picked up a hammer. I studied blueprints after my night shifts at the diner. I learned plumbing from YouTube. I poured the concrete myself. That house didn't just hold us, it saved me." The judge blinked. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. I raised Darren in that house. I worked double shifts for years so he could have school lunches, sneakers that didn't squeak when he walked, and a warm bed. I never asked for anything in return. And now, after all this time, he wants to take it from me like it's some family heirloom I left lying around. I paused, my voice thick. He calls me selfish. But selfish is trying to evict your mother after she gave you everything she had. That courtroom? Dead silent. But Darren still had his tricks. He leaned forward and said loudly, "She's manipulating the court with her sob story. She wants to make me look like a villain because she can't handle losing control." I turned slowly to him, voice calm but sharp. "You lost me the day you turned love into leverage, Darren." And that, right there, that was the real betrayal. Because it wasn't about the house. It was about power. He wanted to win. He wanted to take something from me, so he could finally feel like the big man. But what he didn't realize was that the woman he was dragging to court wasn't some helpless widow. I was a survivor. I was a builder. And I was done letting him treat me like a burden instead of a blessing. So when the judge picked up that gavel and leaned forward, Darren was smirking like he already knew the outcome. But then the judge spoke. And his exact words? "Mr. Brooks, after reviewing all documentation and hearing your mother's testimony, it is clear that not only do you have no legal claim to the property, but your actions border on financial coercion. I strongly advise you reconsider your relationship with the woman who gave you life, because based on today, she deserves far better." I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just stood up, walked past my son, and said, "I built this house with my bare hands. Don't ever forget it. If you're a mother, a father, or anyone who's ever been betrayed by someone you raised with love, stand your ground. Blood may be thick, but love built on respect is thicker. Don't let guilt silence you. Don't let entitlement win. Because the ones who know what sacrifice really means, we may bend, but we never break." The courthouse steps were still behind me when I felt the weight in my chest drop. It wasn't relief, it was grief. Not for the house. But for my son. I didn't recognize the man who stood in front of me today. That angry, bitter face, twisted with pride and greed, that wasn't the little boy I used to carry on my hip while mixing concrete. That wasn't the young man who cried when he couldn't afford prom. That wasn't the child who used to wait on the porch, holding his daddy's old hammer, saying, "One day I'm gonna build like you, Mama." So what happened? What poisoned him? Was it me? Did I raise him too soft? Did I protect him too long? Or did this world fill his ears with so much noise about what he deserves, he forgot how much he already had? I remember the day we moved into that house. No roof yet. Just 4 walls, and my heart bursting with hope. I had $74 in the bank, a beat-up pickup truck, and a toddler with skinned knees who thought sleeping on a mattress on the floor was an adventure. We ate beans from a can that night and called it a feast. It wasn't much. But it was ours. I worked cleaning cabins during the day, bartending at night. There were winters we couldn't afford heat. Summers when I'd sell blood plasma just to buy groceries. You think I ever complained? Never. Not once. Because every single hardship had a purpose, to build a future for my son. To give him everything I never had. And for a while, I thought I did it right. He got into college, the community college, but it still made me cry. I remember pawning my wedding ring to buy him a used laptop. He promised me he'd make something of himself. "I'm gonna take care of you one day, Mama," he said. But promises are easy when you're broke. The truth comes when the money does. The change didn't happen all at once. It was subtle. First, it was the girlfriends who only called me your mom like I was some stranger. Then it was the jobs he quit after a few months, blaming toxic bosses and bad luck. But the worst part? He stopped visiting the house. Said it was too far, said it reminded him of the past, said I was too intense. What he really meant was, it didn't impress anyone anymore. He started chasing image, fast cars he couldn't afford, watches he borrowed for pictures, fake friends who praised him for being the only one in his family with sense. He forgot where he came from. And when I refused to co-sign a loan for his latest business idea? That's when the mask came off. Don't forget, he said one night, standing in my kitchen, legally, I'm your next of kin. You can't keep that house forever. I looked at him like he'd grown horns. I didn't keep this house for me, Darren, I whispered. I kept it so you'd always have somewhere to come home to. He just laughed. I don't want your broken-down house, Mom. I want what it's worth. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked barefoot through every room in that house. My hands touched the walls like they were old friends. The living room still had the paint stain where Darren spilled blue finger paint when he was 5. The kitchen cabinets still stuck on the left side, because I never had time to fix them. The hallway held every scrape, every dent, every memory etched into wood. And suddenly I realized. He didn't just want the house. He wanted to erase me from it. You know, people love to talk about how parents should let go, but what they never say is how brutal it feels when the child lets you go first. Not because they're grown, but because they think you're in the way. I spent years giving Darren everything, and the moment I needed him to stand beside me, he stood against me. But even now, even after court, even after betrayal, some stupid, stubborn part of me still loves that boy. I don't know if that makes me strong or just foolish. But I know this. Love doesn't mean surrender. And blood doesn't entitle you to someone else's sweat. I got calls from neighbors after the courthouse scene. People asking if I was okay. One woman said, I saw him screaming at you, it broke my heart. I always thought he was such a good boy. He was. But good boys don't stay good when no one holds them accountable. They grow into men who think they can take what they didn't earn, and blame others when the world tells them no. The worst part? I found out later that Darren had already spoken to a realtor before filing the case. He planned to sell the house the moment he won, flip it, take the money, and disappear. That wasn't just betrayal. That was premeditated erasure. He wanted the money, but not the memories. Not the moldy old woman still living in the guest room. Not the woman who washed his feet when he was sick and held his hand at his father's funeral. No, just the profit. But here's what Darren forgot. I didn't build that house just with tools. I built it with love. And love doesn't crumble under lawsuits. It rises up. Brick by brick. Even when your own blood tries to bury it. After the trial, I thought I'd be able to breathe. But instead, I felt this hollowness. Like the house wasn't just empty, I was. Winning in court didn't fix anything. It didn't put love back in my son's eyes. It didn't rewind the years. It didn't answer the question I'd been choking on for months now, how did we get here? I kept walking through the rooms like I was searching for something, a clue, a missing memory, maybe even a version of myself I'd forgotten. And it was in the attic, digging through an old cedar trunk, that I found it. An envelope. Faded. Yellowing at the edges. My name written in my husband's crooked handwriting. To Carolyn, if anything happens. My knees buckled right there on the floor. My husband, Reed, died in a logging accident when Darren was barely 4. He was a good man. Quiet. Loyal. Rough hands but a soft heart. He loved his tools more than he loved talking, and he sure didn't leave behind any fancy bank accounts or life insurance. Or so I thought. The letter was short, but the last line hit like a freight train. If Darren ever turns on you, it won't be out of nowhere. You deserve to know what I never had the courage to say. Beneath the letter was a folder. Inside, bank statements, a land deed, and one birth certificate. But not Darren's. I stared at the name. I read it over and over, convinced my eyes were lying. Biological father, unknown. And under mother's name, it was mine. But Reed's name wasn't on it. And then I remembered. That one year before Reed and I got married, when I was 19, broke, and alone. That summer I never spoke of. That pain I buried so deep even I started to believe Darren had always been Reed's. But he wasn't. I had lied. To myself. To Darren. To Reed. And now I knew why Reed never fully bonded with him. Why he'd sometimes retreat to the shed in silence when Darren acted out. Why his hugs were stiff. Why the distance always lingered, unspoken. He had known. And he never told me. I held that paper in my shaking hands and wept. Not because Darren wasn't Reed's. But because maybe, just maybe, Darren felt it, too. Maybe his whole life, he sensed the fracture. The truth between the walls. The secret in our silence. Maybe he resented me, not because I held control, but because I held the truth. The next day, I called him. I don't even know why. Habit? Guilt? Hope? He answered, voice cold. What do you want? I found something, I said quietly. Something I should have told you years ago. He sighed. More manipulation? No, I said. This time, it's the truth. I told him. Everything. The summer I was 19. The man who left. The baby I didn't expect but refused to give up. The way Red stepped in. The way we built a lie so solid we both started to live in it. And how that lie, over time, cracked the very foundation we'd worked so hard to build. There was silence on the other end of the line. For the first time in months, Darren didn't have a snarky comeback or a cruel threat. Just silence. Then he whispered, so you mean I never belonged to him? You always belonged to me, I said. Every second. Every breath. But not to him. No, I admitted. But he loved you in his own way. He stayed. He raised you. He laughed, bitter, broken. Then why did I always feel like an outsider in my own home? I had no answer. Because maybe I didn't want to admit it was true. Maybe I didn't want to face the fact that love, even the kind you bleed for, sometimes isn't enough to patch over secrets. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Darren asked. I was afraid, I said. Afraid you'd hate me. That you'd leave. That you'd never look at me the same. Well, guess what, Mom, he snapped. You already lost me. And then, he hung up. I sat on the porch for hours after that. Watching the trees sway in the breeze. Listening to the creak of the swing. Feeling the weight of a lifetime pressing on my chest like a stone. I had survived storms. I had survived death. But this? This was something else. This was watching your child slip through your fingers while holding all the reasons in your hand. People think strength is about surviving tragedy. But real strength? It's facing the consequences of your own choices. It's owning your failures, even when they wear your last name. I don't know if Darren will ever come back. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me. But I do know this. The truth may break you, but lies ruin you from the inside out. I didn't lose my house. But I may have lost my son. And the saddest part? I don't even blame him. Not anymore. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since the phone call. 3 weeks of silence. No texts. No voicemails. Just empty mornings and heavier nights. I kept expecting to hear tires in the driveway or his voice through the door. But nothing came. Until it did. One Thursday afternoon, while I was watering the roses, the ones he and I planted when he was 9, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting the mailman. But there he was. Darren. Standing by the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, his eyes swollen like he hadn't slept. His voice was quiet, but it still sliced right through me. I didn't come to fight. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. My throat clenched so tight I thought I'd choke. Why are you here? I asked, not trusting myself. He looked down at his feet. Because I've got nowhere else to go that feels like home. And because you were right. I've been angry my whole life, and I didn't know why. Until now. I stared at him, really stared. He looked like Reed in that moment. Not in the face, but in the way his shoulders drooped under guilt. The same guilt Reed carried his whole life after keeping my secret. The guilt that never said a word, but settled in every glance and every heavy breath. I hated him, Darren said. And I didn't know why. I hated the way he looked at me. I hated how he loved you but never seemed to love me. And I blamed you for it. I swallowed. You were just a boy. You didn't know. But I do now, he said. And it doesn't excuse what I did. He stepped closer. I tried to steal the house. I tried to hurt you. I told myself you owed me, but the truth is, I was trying to make you pay for something that wasn't your fault. I looked at him, heart breaking all over again. Not because of the betrayal. But because in that moment, for the first time in years, I saw my son again. Not the man blinded by pride. Not the boy aching for answers. But the child who once held my hand and asked if monsters were real. And maybe they are. Maybe we all carry a few inside us. I read Dad's letter, Darren said quietly. The one you found. I froze. How did you? I came by when you weren't home. I saw the envelope on the kitchen table. I didn't scold him. I didn't yell. Because what could I say? He had read the one thing I hadn't meant for anyone else to see. He was a better man than I gave him credit for, Darren admitted. And I never gave you the grace you deserved either. He looked up at me, finally. Eyes shining. Voice shaking. I'm sorry, Mom. I stepped forward, slowly. My hands trembled. You don't get to erase the pain with just words, I said. You tried to erase me. You put a $sign on a life I gave everything for. I know. You humiliated me in court. You called me selfish in public. You accused me of losing control. I know, he whispered. And if I could take it back, I would. All of it. I paused. Then I said, something I never thought I'd say. But I forgive you anyway. His breath hitched. Why? Because that's what mothers do. We stood in silence. The kind of silence that only comes after fire, when everything around you has turned to ash, but somehow, you're both still standing. Darren reached into his jacket and pulled out a paper. I had a lawyer draw this up, he said. It's a full legal release. I'll never try to claim the house again. I'm removing myself from any future inheritance. I don't deserve any of it. He handed it to me. I didn't even look at it. I just pulled him into my arms and held him like he was 4 years old again, crying over scraped knees. He sobbed into my shoulder. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, we both let go. Of secrets. Of anger. Of blame. And just held on to what we still had left. That night, we sat on the porch swing in silence, watching the sky go orange. I don't know who my real father is, Darren said. I don't either, I replied. But you always had a real mother. And sometimes, that's more than enough. He nodded. It is. It's funny how the quiet feels different after a storm. Not empty. Not lonely. Just peaceful. A few months have passed since Darren came back. And no, things aren't perfect. We're still learning how to talk without walking on broken glass. Still learning how to rebuild trust one slow, painful conversation at a time. But there's something beautiful in that too. Because healing doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's just sitting across the table from someone who once tried to destroy you, and seeing that they're finally ready to understand. Not excuse. Not justify. Understand. He helps around the house now. Cuts the grass. Fixes things I gave up on years ago. We don't bring up the lawsuit anymore, not because it's forgotten, but because we both know the scar is already there. And scars? They don't disappear. But they do stop hurting eventually. One morning, he brought me coffee and said, "I used to think this place trapped you. But now I see, this house saved you." I smiled. "It didn't just save me," I said. "It built me." And that's the truth. This house, every corner of it, is a piece of me. Not because of the walls or the windows, but because of the woman I became while building it. I didn't go to college. I didn't marry rich. I never traveled the world. But I raised a child on a waitress's wages and a widow's grit. I built a home with no blueprint except stubbornness and prayer. And somewhere along the way, I forgot to be proud of that. Because this world loves to tell women like me that we're nothing if we don't have a husband, a high-rise apartment, or a retirement fund in the Bahamas. But let me tell you something. I've got creaky floorboards that hold 1,000 memories. I've got chipped countertops and photographs taped to the fridge. I've got calloused hands and a heart that never gave up. And now? I've got my son back. Not the perfect version of him, but the real one. The broken, healing, grown-up man who finally understands what love looks like when it isn't wrapped in conditions. He asked me the other night, "Do you regret keeping the secret from me?" I didn't lie. "Yes," I said. "But I don't regret raising you. Because even if I could go back, even if I had the chance to do it all over again, I'd still choose the hard road. I'd still pour the concrete. I'd still swing the hammer. I'd still fight tooth and nail for a life built on love, not lies." You see, sometimes the people we love hurt us the most. But sometimes, if we're lucky, they come back. Wiser. Humbled. Human. And that's when we have to decide. Do we hold on to the pain? Or do we open the door, just wide enough, to let grace walk in? So here's what I want you to take from my story. You don't have to be rich to be strong. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. And just because someone shares your blood, doesn't mean they've earned your forgiveness. But if they come back with truth, with tears, and with hands ready to rebuild, you get to choose what happens next. Not out of weakness, but out of power. Because forgiveness, real forgiveness, is not surrender. It's sovereignty. Now, the roses are blooming again. Darren's building a small woodworking business out of the shed his father left behind. We talk more. Laugh more. Cry sometimes too. And every so often, when the wind hits just right, I sit on the porch swing with a cup of coffee and watch the sun rise over the land I once thought I'd lose. The land I fought for. The house I built with my bare hands. And I whisper to myself, not in anger, not in sorrow, but with pride. He didn't win. I didn't lose. We just had to break, to finally become whole. What you build with love, sacrifice, and strength, no one can truly take from you. Not even your own blood. Because real value isn't in the walls you raise. It's in the hands that built them. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt unappreciated, betrayed, or heartbroken by the very people you sacrificed for, you are not alone. Share this video with someone who needs to remember their worth. Tag a mom, a builder, a survivor, someone who's held everything together when no one else even noticed. And always remember, the world may try to tear you down. But when you build with love, you build something they can never take away. Broken heart, house, flexed biceps.